Could welcome everyone to this meeting of the Cabinet of Monmouthshire County Council. I'm Councillor Paul Griffiths, I'm Deputy Leader, and I'm chairing this meeting because the Leader of the Council, Chair of the Cabinet, Councillor Mary-Anne Brocklesby, is representing the County Council at an Economic Development Conference in Leeds. So as Deputy Leader, it becomes my role to chair this meeting. And if I can ask first if there are any apologies for absence?
No other apologies yet.
No other apologies. Are there any declarations of interest? No, fine. So the third item of the agenda relates to a published report on placemaking grant programme 25-26 to 26-27. I'm the Cabinet member responsible for our work on town centres, our work on placemaking grants. As an introduction to this report, I would like to say that I regard that the work that we do to develop the vitality of our town centres is one of the most important objectives of the County Council. Whether or not we live in our towns, our town centres contribute so much to our lives. They bring us together, supporting each other, enjoying each other's company. They are retail centres, but they are so much more. They're centres for leisure, for arts, sports, a whole range of local amenities. The placemaking grant programme relates to the programme of the Welsh Government entitled Transforming Towns. In our context and the way we operate it, it's been a programme which has brought together town councils, town businesses, along with the County Council, and in a more detached way, the Welsh Government, in what I regard as a truly productive partnership. In the towns which are currently participating, includes Abergavenny, Monmouth, Chepstow, Caldicot, Usk, Mega. Each town has created a steering group that together develops its own placemaking plan and then begins to share responsibility for delivering the projects within that plan. Funding is available from Welsh Government, though match funding must be found either from the County Council or from the Town Council. Throughout the county, I have found these steering groups to be genuine partnerships, creative partnerships between county councillors, town councillors, and the officers of both tiers. And I think we've much to learn and develop from the experience of these steering groups. The report gives illustrations of the projects which have been funded in the past 2 years. They include 53 Frogmore Street in Abergavenny, a prominent building, 15 Monnow Street and St Thomas's Garden in Monmouth. In Caldicot, there's been the external refurbishment of the youth centre, referred to locally as the Zone. There's been refurbishment of the shop fronts in Caldicot, including the much welcomed new post office. There's been external insulation and the cladding of the flats above the shopping parade, which has supported Monmouthshire Housing Association in providing a new suite, if you like, of accommodation central in the town centre itself. In Chepstow, prominent projects have included the refurbishment of the Drill Hall Arts Centre and the Rainbow Cafe, which was really the first building you saw as you came into Chepstow, which hosts the community fridge. Each of these, I think, have been much welcomed projects and projects which have served the objective of enhancing the vitality of our town centre. They don't do that on their own. They provide the context in which the energy and vitality of local people itself provides the magnet for the success of our town centres. but getting the civic spaces, getting the buildings right, allows that magnet, if you like, to operate. In Appendix A of the report, we give illustrations for a £2 million programme over the next 2 years. That's the allocation, the core allocation, £2 million over 2 years that Welsh Government is providing to Monmouthshire County Council. And those indications in the appendix indicate that we will make progress on Gab Square in Abergavenny, on Caldicot Town Centre public realm, on the St Mary's Priory walkway in Chepstow, a rather dark walkway which will become the conduit between the riverside and the town centre, which is currently lacking. Public realm around Monmouth bus station and Toyne Square in Usk. That's the context. What I'm asking you to agree is the report as an update, but also the indicative forward plan in the appendix. So any questions on that report?
Yeah, thanks. I noticed that the projects listed in Appendix A are described as indicative. So does this mean that there can be any other projects developed in the next few years? And if so, then who would be the decision maker on those projects?
Thanks very much for that question, because I think it raises an important point that I want to share in Cabinet, that the decision taker is not me as a Cabinet member, it's not this Cabinet, it's a shared decision-making process with the local towns, people on the steering group, local businesses, town councillors. So it's important that we as a Cabinet share these indications, but we don't take it on ourselves to be the decision maker. These are projects which have come out of those steering groups and are being reported to Cabinet. Those steering groups over the next 2 years will adjust their priorities. Caldicot, for instance, will develop a new placemaking plan, and that will create new projects in Caldicot, and they will put that on their list. We won't say wait 2 years for that to happen. Be it in Abergavenny is about to agree, and I know you're on the steering group, Councillor Wright, agree its own placemaking plan, and that will add to the list of projects which will be put forward by Abergavenny. Not everything will be achieved in the next 2 years. The steering group will decide on its own priorities. So there will be a constant reprioritisation. There will be adjustment to events in our towns. The decision takers will be shared decision-making forums in the towns itself. We as a Cabinet will keep ourselves informed, but we won't be controllers.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on that? So the report, I can find it again, is asking us to agree certain things. So we're asked to agree the proposed indicative placement grant programme in 25, 26 and 27, and authorises the Chief Officer of Place to prioritise and adjust the programme as needed in liaison with the Cabinet member, informed by consultation with local placemaking, steering and delivery groups. Are you all in favour of that recommendation, agreeing that recommendation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks very much. So if we move on then to agenda item 4, Active Gwent and Sports Partnership Report. So Councillor Sandals, that's over to you.
Thanks, Chair, and everybody. You'll all have read the report and understand that it's asking approval to enter a new formal partnership with the other 4 Gwent local authorities using a hosted model approach. This is a national directive from Sport Wales, and through the Regional Sports Partnership would provide regional level strategic leadership, planning and commissioning. It asks us to approve the support for Newport to act as the host authority. The aim is to better support the national vision of sport for Wales. Sport Wales will invest into each of the sports partnerships using the new Sport Wales investment model once the new partnerships are established. The sport partnership will then distribute this funding excuse me, into each local authority area and the agreed partners. The sport partnerships will make funding decisions based on data and insight. This will be agreed and then signed off by Sport Wales using the partnership agreement. The new investment model looks to ensure that we invest in the areas that need it most, allowing Monmouthshire's sport development team to operate independently, but also collaboratively on shared regional objectives, sharing resources, best practice and learning. The organisations will be able to create the most impact against the vision for sport in Wales, with equalities at the forefront of our decision making. Monmouthshire are confident that they can play an active role in the strategic direction of the region, whilst maintaining the delivery of Monmouthshire's local priority, and as noted in our community and corporate plan. And I'd like to thank the officers who have brought all this together and worked so hard. And I think moving forward, it'll be a new way of working for Monmouthshire and sport development.
Thanks very much. Any questions of Councillor Sandals?
I have a question.
Because
the Monmouthshire has an incredibly skilled team who consistently deliver high-class sport provision and a great deal of support to community grassroots sport. With the new model, how can we ensure that the minimum is spent on administration and the maximum on delivery?
Thanks, that's a really good point. And what we've done, we've considered this, and in order to ensure that we do get the best service, we're asking for an annual evaluation in each of the first 3 years to satisfy ourselves that this new model has not led to a reduced service within Monmouthshire. We will require a statement documenting how much the host authority has spent on administration each year to satisfy that that is, that the money is going to the right place.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. Any other questions? I haven't got a question. When I heard about this, I had the reflection about how much we can learn from the outstanding success of the regionalisation of Welsh rugby.
Come on.
I'll leave that thought hanging. Any more positive reflections? Okay. So the recommendations before us are that we approve Monmouthshire Sport Development to formally enter the active Gwent Sport Partnership. All agreed?
Yeah.
Number 2, that we approve the preferred approach of a hosted model of the sport partnership in the Gwent region. All agreed?
Yeah, you do.
And finally, that we approve the support for Newport City Council to act as the host authority for the new active Gwent Sports Partnership. All agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So that takes us on to the report relating to the Marches Forward Partnership. Our representative on the Marches Partnership is Councillor Mary-Ann Brocklesby, the leader, who can't be with us today. So I will introduce the report and take questions on it. The Marches Partnership was one that we agreed to participate in as recently as 2023. So it's a new partnership, which everyone would agree is defining its purpose, defining its shape through experience. There isn't an agreed destination. We're working our way to how we can collaborate, how we can work together. In this updating report, Cabinet is asked to approve the areas of collaborative activities as 3 priority areas. First, high productivity in rural areas with small towns and city links. I picked that phrase out of the report, and I think it's a very apt one. The participating authorities, Shropshire, Powys, Herefordshire, ourselves, we often define ourselves as rural, but within that rurality, as I said in our first report, we need to understand the pivotal role of our town centres, and in many cases, our links to neighbouring cities as well. And that phrase, I think, captures that. We achieve that productivity by finding the interrelationship between rurality, small towns, city links. The second priority area relates to healthy and connected places, and the third, the green economy. In form, I suggest, and as reported in the document, the partnership compared to, for instance, the Cardiff City region, this partnership is at the looser end of collaboration. There is no legal entity and there is no formal governance. We work together as and when we see benefit in so doing. We're not tied in to a decision-taking or to a particular programme. Up until now, our financial contribution to the partnership has been around £100,000 and we've chosen to use part of our allocation from the Shared Prosperity Fund to support that contribution. Going forward, the report says that Monmouthshire County Council will provide around 60,000 from its capital budget to capitalise this contribution. That's the report. And before we move to the recommendation, can I ask if there's any questions relating to this report? I know Councillor John's got a question, but before we get to Councillor John, any other questions? Sarah?
Not so much a question as a comment, just to say how exciting I regard the opportunities here in terms of rural transport, in terms of the food economy, and in tourism. I think there are real opportunities for the county here through this partnership.
Good. Any other contributions? Councillor John, you've informed us of an impending question.
I have. Thank you, Deputy Leader. Good afternoon, everyone. As you were just saying, Monmouthshire's financial contribution so far has been funded by the UK government. But in light of the UK government's recent and quite sudden decision to withdraw funding for the Western Gateway, and bearing in mind that this model of partnership is quite different to the model of devolution that Angela Rayner's pursuing, what confidence have you got that this partnership is going to have the support of UK government?
Okay, thanks for the question. I think it covers important ground. I think we need to recognise that the two partnerships have been funded very differently in the past. The Western Gateway had a direct funding route from UK government. The Marches Partnership hasn't. I'll come back to that in a moment. So the Western Gateway, whilst it was a voluntary association of local authorities extending quite widely, the UK government made a direct grant to that partnership itself. This funding has ceased. The UK government has said that it wishes to reshape, perhaps put some shape on regional arrangements in England, and in doing that, we'll find alternative funding routes for those arrangements. The Marches Partnership was never directly funded. Has never been directly funded by the UK government in the same way. It's funded by contributions from the 4 constituent authorities. It so happens that Monmouthshire County Council, and at least some of the others, I'm not sure whether it was all of them, looked at the objectives of the Shared Prosperity Fund. It had been allocated from UK government a block under the Shared Prosperity Fund, and they freely chose to allocate some part of that block through their partnerships to the Marches Partnership. But it was very much the local authorities choosing to make that contribution rather than direct funding from the UK government. We have reflected as Monmouthshire County Council, and our partners have again, how we want to fund it going forward. It so happens that in Monmouthshire going forward, we've chosen not to make a call on the Shared Prosperity Fund, but to actually find the limited sum of money from our own capital budget. So my answer is that they've. I also should point out that in terms of support from the UK government, a recent development in the Marshes Partnership is that the UK government, under its new leadership, and specifically in Angela Rayner's own portfolio, has chosen to seek a presence in various working groups of the Marshes Partnership. So if you like, that is an expression of genuine interest and a desire to be an active partner in the Marshes, which I think is a positive move by the UK government there. So I hope that offers some light as an answer to your question, Mr. John.
Thank you.
Any other? No. So if we move on to the recommendations under this report, I always lose my place at that pivotal point. We're asked that the Cabinet approves the Marshes proposition, Appendix 1. All agreed?
Yeah.
We're asked that we approve the light touch governance arrangements outlined in Appendix 2. All agreed? And we're asked to approve the evaluation of the partnership's progress, which I've outlined when we move forward. We've looked at the past, that we evaluate partnership's progress in the next 12 months to satisfy ourselves of the partnership's ability to move forward from concept to delivery and offer longer term tangible benefits to the county. You all agree to that?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my mission in life to move from delivery, or is it concept to delivery?
To delivery. Yeah.
We will do it. Okay. If we move on then to agenda item 6, which is the digital data and technology collaboration. And I believe Councillor Callard, Ben, you were going to stand in for Councillor Brocklesby in presenting this report.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. The council, Monmouthshire County Council, has a clear purpose to become a zero carbon county that supports well-being, health and dignity for everyone at every stage of their life. Digital and data are recognised as key enablers that will help us achieve these outcomes. And our ability to make full use of these technologies is currently constrained by capacity and capability. With limited budgets, the opportunity to invest the sums that would be required to bring about the necessary change is constrained. Neighbouring authorities in Blaenau Gwent and Torfaen are in a similar position. By collaborating, the authorities will be able to capitalise on economies of scale to attract and retain a workforce with the skills to take us to the next level in the use of digital and data. All three organisations, along with Newport City Council, are partners in the Shared Resource Service, or SRS, which has successfully supplied our technology services since 2011. The SRS Strategic Board commissioned and endorsed exploratory work, which has identified the potential for SRS to expand its operations to encompass digital data and technology, sometimes referred to as DDAT. The initial paper received and agreed by the board is included as a background paper at Appendix 2. The anticipated benefits are resilience for service development and delivery, increased momentum to meet partner organisations' digital ambitions, maximising skills and capacity and avoiding duplication, wider development opportunities for staff, and user-centred design shaping services. Creating seamless access to data will provide practitioners with a more comprehensive and nuanced understanding of communities, groups of people and individuals. For example, regional data can highlight disparities in health outcomes, educational attainment and economic opportunities across different geographies, enabling targeted interventions that promote greater equality and cohesion. This will enable them to make more timely and effective decisions, which should lead to better outcomes for the individuals. It will also enable us to increase the frequency of data reporting, improving the ability of councillors and managers to make data-enabled decisions. The data functions that will sit as part of the new collaboration include predictive analytics, data science, and capitalizing on the potential of the Internet of Things. Functions such as performance data will remain with each of the partners' authorities. It was accepted by the SRS board that more detailed proposals and further work would need to be done to develop the case for investment in data, with a meeting of the Futures Group having taken place on the 9th of May to begin this work. This collaborative service will focus on enhancing frontline services, generating actionable insights from data, tailored intelligence, and predictive analytics to support service redesign and place shaping, fostering collaboration across agencies and developing innovative solutions to address complex challenges. The investment case will be presented to the SRS Strategic Board in the first instance before being subject to a decision by Cabinet. Torfaen and Blaenau Gwent will each be transferring one member of staff from day one. Monmouthshire does not have sufficient data staff to be able to do this without stopping core functions, and therefore a new data post will be created to ensure that Monmouthshire is able to participate fully in and capitalise from the embryonic data service from day one, alongside the other two authorities. This is covered in the recommendations and resource requirements of the paper and means that partners can begin collaborating on shared data priorities as soon as possible. Appendix 1 of the report shows a timeline of the key activity and decision points, along with a summary of the functions within each of the service areas that were considered. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Callard. An important matter. It continues our programme of seeking the opportunities of working with other local authorities, neighbouring local authorities, to achieve our objectives. Are there any questions relating to this particular step forward, this particular programme? Okay, it seems that the report is convinced us, and this presentation by Councillor Callard requires no further question from us, so I'll move to the significant number of recommendations. So the first recommendation is that we begin the process of transitioning to this shared service. We all agreed. The second recommendation is for the authority's digital team to begin working alongside partner organisations at the earliest opportunity, with the target for the team to transfer to the shared service no later than the 1st of April 2026, subject to the conclusion of staff and trade union consultation in accordance with 2P. We all agree to that. Third, to agree the current digital service budget to be used to enable the delivery of the new shared service. Agreed? Good. Fourth, to prepare an investment case for a modern data service operating across the participating authorities. All agreed?
Yeah.
5, that 77,000 is drawn from the ICT reserve to fund the costs during year 1 of the collaboration. We all agreed. And 6, to revisit the potential to enter collaborative arrangements in relation to information security at a later stage following the completion of further work, which will be reported to the SRS Strategic Board in the coming months. All agreed?
Yeah.
Right, thanks very much for that. So if we move on to the next agenda item, which relates to apprentice, the shared construction apprentice scheme. And if you just bear with me. So the background to this report is that since, for almost a decade now, since 2016, the local authority, Monmouthshire County Council, has been working with partners on the provision of a shared apprentice scheme focusing on construction workers. The scheme, it came to our notice as a cabinet during the end of last year, was facing the consequences of falling recruitment and falling retention of apprentices on the scheme, resulting in a actual and a projected fall in revenue. The arrangements put in place in 2016 are that it is or has been a shared enterprise, a partnership between local authorities in South East Wales and various other organisations, including registered social landlords in South East Wales. There has been a board of which Monmouthshire County Council has been one member, several other members on that board. The board at the end of last year reflected on its own situation, reflected on its projected loss of income. And collectively, the board reached the decision that it wanted to cease operations as a company fulfilling those objectives. Equally significantly, the host authority, the authority which was actually employing the staff, organising the programmes, Melin Homes, the Melin Homes board made its own decision that it would no longer perform the role of being the host organisation. The sequence of events was brought to my attention as the responsible cabinet member. I regarded the situation as grave. It seemed to me that the need for construction apprenticeships was as present now as it would have been a decade ago. Whenever I meet construction companies in my employment role, I'm told that their inability to source apprentices, to create apprenticeships for themselves for one reason or another, was an inhibiting factor, inhibition on the development of the construction industry. There's a need for apprentices, and our own young people in the county ought to have that opportunity to seek employment in this industry through the apprenticeship route. So I was regarded it as grave developments when I was told that the company was on the point of ceasing to operate. Our own staff, working with our own staff, took the initiative amongst the partners to find an alternative host and to find an alternative form of governance. Various options were tested. The most productive option was the contact that we made with the equivalent organisation in South West Wales, which is entitled a cyfle opportunity. We reached out to a cyfle and we were asking the question, would they be willing to take on the responsibility for around 50 apprentices currently on the books of apprentice, and would they be willing to extend their offer from South West Wales into South East Wales? Our own officers worked hard at continuing those discussions. They came to a positive conclusion. Cyfle needed to do its own due diligence tests. It needed to ensure that any transfer of assets matched any transfer of liabilities, and that in taking on South East Wales, they were not doing anything other than adding to their ability to perform their current function of serving South West Wales. They came to a positive conclusion on all those matters. and they offered to extend their operations. So whereas I regarded the sequence of events around Apprentice as unfortunate, I regarded the relationship building with Cyfle as a very positive sequence of events. And what the recommendations are, and I put them to Cabinet for consideration, is that we recognise something that we were unable to directly control, the cessation of the Apprentice governance arrangement, and that we look forward to Apprentice becoming a project within the Cyfle operations, and that we seek to be part of the governance. I'll go through the specifics later of the new Cyfle organisation. So the report, I think, in some aspects is not going to be welcomed. We would have preferred that Apprentice continued its original record of success, but the report is positive in that it's finding an alternative route forward. Any questions? I know Councillor John has indicated a question on this, but any questions from Cabinet members before I go to Councillor John? Okay, Councillor John.
Yeah, thank you. Apprentice has given a lot of opportunities, vocational opportunities to young people, and made a significant contribution to the wider economy, estimated just under £2 million. The administration's corporate plan committed to scaling up delivery through Apprentice. Now you're proposing, we're now looking at the exact opposite. It's already difficult enough to get apprentices in Monmouthshire, due to unnecessary cross-border policy differences between Wales and England. So how do you propose to make up this shortfall?
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. And without having sort of examined all aspects of your past, Councillor John, I suspect you would, when you were a Cabinet member, have shared some responsibility for the development of Apprentice, and I've no doubt would have been taken aback by the news that from early success, the organisation appeared to reach the point of not being viable, and that is not positive news, as I said, and I think it would have created on you in particular, having worked on this previously. It has had a positive past. It has had a record of securing construction apprentices, and I think that's a hugely important activity. As I say, the industry, without public intervention, because of the ups and downs in the construction industry, on its own, it fails to sustain a continuous flow of apprentices. It needs public intervention, and Apprentice was set up to meet what we could define as market failure in that area, and it succeeded for a period of time. But times do change, and I think what the report tells us is that we were meeting an organisation which, for one reason or another, had concluded that it was no longer viable. And what the report tells us is that we've worked to find an alternative arrangement. As I've said, Apprentice board had been given the information, falling levels of recruitment, retention, falling levels of income, and Melin, as the host, sought to cease the organisation. It was not a decision of Monmouthshire County Council. I did not necessarily welcome it, but I needed to respond to it, and that's why we did reach out to Cyfle in the way that I've just described. My aim is to ensure, I can't guarantee anything, my aim is to ensure through positive participation by Monmouthshire County Council that we do all that we can to make Cyfle an effective arrangement for taking forward a new programme and a programme that goes back to a growth trajectory rather than decline when it has been for some time. We have the commitment of supporting objectives. It's in our corporate plan. It's very much in our strategy we agreed in 2023, our economy, employment and skills strategy, where we very clearly said we want to develop not less but more skill development opportunities in the county. I want to stress that making Cyfle a success is not the only way in which we'll achieve that objective. We're always looking for new and further ways of securing apprentices, not just in construction, but throughout the economy, and skills development in all forms. Cabinet will be aware, Councillor John will be aware of the innovative work that's going on in our secondary schools to develop level 2 qualifications in those schools, diversifying the school-based curriculum. That will suit many who need introductions to apprenticeship style learning. And again, whilst we're doing that and we're doing Cyfle, that will not be exhaustive. We are very active in seeking further partnerships, new mechanisms for developing apprenticeships and skill development in the county of Monmouthshire. Some of those discussions that we're having will come to conclusions, I hope, in the near future, and we'll be able to take this discussion forward, adding to Cyfle new and other ways of developing skills and apprenticeships in the county. So thanks for the question, Councillor John. So if we move on to the recommendation, that firstly, we approve is the word down there. We recognise, we approve the cessation of apprentice joint shareholders, Melin Homes, Headin and Monmouthshire County Council. Do you approve the cessation of that company? Yep. Yep. Secondly, that apprentice becomes a project within the Cyfle company and all undertakings to be transferred to Cyfle. Agree. Okay. And third, that an MCC officer should have a seat on the Cyfle board of directors to provide future updates and scrutiny to Scrutiny Committee and to Cabinet. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for that. And if we move on to agenda item 8, the letting of the former Abergavenny Library, and Councillor Callard, you'll introduce that report.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Cabinet will remember that in late 2024, the old Abergavenny Library was declared surplus to the needs of the Council's Education Service following the relocation of the Pupil Referral Unit. The old library was passed over to Landlord Services in order to commence marketing the property, and the objective was to explore opportunities to maximise social benefit and generate a financial return from an otherwise vacant asset. As a former Carnegie building, the building has restrictive covenants which prohibit uses that may result in disturbance to neighbouring properties, such as restaurants or bars. Following a period of marketing, a tender deadline was set for receipt of proposals, including detailed business plans for the respective uses. A range of offers were received, and the tenders were evaluated based on an established scoring matrix, of which more detail can be found in Appendix 1 of the report. But it includes the evidence of the demand for the proposed use, the proposed terms, due diligence undertaken and experience, and also financial sustainability. The recommendation in the report is that the lease be awarded to Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association. Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association are a not-for-profit group proposing to occupy the building for the creation of Monmouthshire's first mosque and community centre. The proposal identifies the demand, need and subsequent gap in provision for the rapidly growing Muslim population in Monmouthshire, serving people of diverse racial, cultural and socio-economic backgrounds. An extract from the business plan can be found in Appendix B. The proposal aims to bring the former Abergavenny Library into beneficial community use by providing a mosque and community centre to facilitate educational, social, economic and recreational value for Muslim residents of Monmouthshire and the wider community. The proposal outlines the intention to contribute to improving the health and well-being of all members of the community, encouraging economic growth by making Monmouthshire a more inclusive and attractive place to live, promoting interfaith dialogues and supporting the local community, including refugees who have made their home in the area. The former library is considered highly suitable for these purposes due to its central location, capacity and configuration. The proposed use falls within the property's existing use class of D1, and therefore no planning consent is required for the occupation. Subject to the approval of the recommendations within the report, a certificate of lawfulness will be applied for to provide assurance that no material change of use is required. Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association are currently located at St Michael's Centre, where they successfully operated alongside other uses and religious groups, with ongoing support from the trustees of the facility in Our Lady and St Michael's Parish. This has evidenced an increase in the number of residents attending the Friday prayers who live and work in Abergavenny and the surrounding areas. The Friday prayer provision is also accessed by local business owners, teachers and the hospital staff at Neville Hall Hospital. For Muslim people, after the home and the workplace, the mosque is the most frequented place. In accordance with the community and corporate plan's commitment for Monmouthshire to be a place of sanctuary, the letting of the property to MMCA will enable the county to build on its commitment to being a welcoming, safe and inclusive community. Within the group, there is a reasonable level of experience in property management, and the business plan outlines an intention to invest in the property, inclusive of energy efficiency measures, sustainability upgrades, whilst challenging on a building of this type and listed status are being actively explored by the prospective tenant. It's interesting to note that Abergavenny has the highest number of Muslims within Monmouthshire, but not a single mosque. In contrast, Newport has 8 mosques. With no access to a place of worship within the county, residents are having to travel to mosques in other local authority areas, and this has proved challenging in terms of travel, arriving at specified prayer times, and also during Ramadan. When I was growing up in Abergavenny, I remember getting my first library card in this library and also borrowing my first library book. These days, I pass it regularly on my walk into town, and I look forward to the building once more serving the local community. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Callard, and your introduction and the report reminds me that when we consider unused assets in our ownership, we have found ourselves through our asset strategy to consider a range of potential uses, and one of them is beneficial community use, and that's the consideration that's been given. And everything the report tells me and you've told me is that a mosque is both a religious facility but very much also a community facility, and that there is a gap in provision within our county. So it seems to me that the proposal fits our asset strategy in seeking to bring into beneficial community use, filling a gap through this particular transfer. That's me sharing my view, but does anyone else have a reflection or a question relating to this?
Just a brief statement. It's not a question. It's just this is a wonderful step forward as we're now coming towards being accepted as a county of sanctuary. So this actually evidences that we are basically following through on that, and I think it's wonderful because, you know, we've got really strong links now with the Muslim community who've obviously come in for the last 3 years into County Hall, and I think this is a fantastic step forward. I thank everybody that's been involved with this every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sandals. Any other reflections, questions? I know Councillor John has a question, but any others?
Yes, just to say, I think this will be excellent for Abergavenny. I think we've heard from young people, the Muslim the Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association how much this mosque is wanted. We know how many residents there are who work at the hospital and in local businesses and don't have a place of worship to meet their needs in Monmouthshire. So we'll be able to step forward.
Thanks very much. And Councillor John, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Although I must pick up on the point Councillor Callard made a moment ago, where I don't think he's really comparing like with like. He mentioned that there's not a single mosque in the whole of Monmouthshire, yet Newport's got 8. Well, of course, you're not comparing like with like in terms of the need. According to the 2021 census, there are just over 100 residents in Abergavenny who are Muslim, compared with just under 12,000 in Newport. So the need is quite different. But I've got a couple of questions about this. And firstly, I want to ask about the duration of the lease, because I note that the Gathering, when it came to the day centre at Tudor Street, they were offered a 12-month lease. Yet here you're proposing a 30-year lease for an organisation with seemingly no accounts and no history of being able to successfully manage an asset like this. Do you think that's financially responsible?
Thank you for the question, Councillor John. And just to pick up your earlier point, I completely accept that there are different populations, of Muslims within Monmouthshire and within Newport. Hence why I suppose Newport's got 8 mosques, and up until this point, Monmouthshire has had none. So that point's taken. Regarding your question, all the tenderers were invited to submit their desired lease term as part of their tender submission, and more than one tenderer sought a long-term lease agreement. MMCA are an organisation that have been formally constituted and operating from assets within the community since 2021. Evidence has been provided as to the financial status of the group, including existing cash reserves, community contributions and venue hire costs. And we're satisfied that they've got sufficient expertise within the organisation to successfully and sustainably operate from the asset. And you mentioned the Gathering, who initially took on a short-term lease at the Tudor Street Day Centre. I know that they have been getting on very well there. I know Councillor Wright has had like a front row seat with them, supporting them with their progress. And I really hope that we can move them onto a longer-term lease when the time is right.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the financial return, I note that the rent proposed is £6,000, which is £500 a month. I note on Rightmove there's not a single property in Abergavenny that you can let for under £1,000, not even a garage. So why hasn't the council explored commercial opportunities that perhaps could generate a greater financial return to taxpayers?
Thank you, Councillor John. We did explore commercial opportunities. We had commercial tenders within our tender receipts, but you will be able to see from the scoring matrix that they did not score as highly as the successful tenderer. And as I mentioned in my introduction, there are limits on what you can do within a Carnegie building because of the restrictive covenants on it. And also a building of this nature does require significant investment in order to make it function as a community asset.
Okay, I asked that question because it's mentioned in point 5 of the options appraisal that one of the risks was that a further examination of commercial options could have been considered. Thirdly, can I ask how this proposal has been scrutinised, because it doesn't seem to have gone through any scrutiny committees?
Thank you, Councillor John. The decision to declare the asset surplus and make the former library available for letting was taken by Cabinet in November 2024. That report granted authority to Landlord Services and the Estates Department to market the property, the results of which you will see within the report. The awarding of lease agreements on council assets is a delegated function, so it doesn't need to come to Cabinet. There are instances whereby, as Cabinet and at the leader's discretion, we bring some lease agreements to Cabinet in order that where we have a significant community asset, that we can, I guess, provide a little bit more visibility to the decisions that we're taking that are so important to our communities.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. And I just, on those points that should come up in the exchange between Councillor John and Councillor Callard, I'm just reflecting, and I suspect all of us in Cabinet will have similar experiences to me, where we've witnessed the leasing of community buildings in our wards, the renewal of those leases, and we've noted, at least I've noted in my ward, that those leases are quite normally of 25, 30 years. If we're expecting the lessee to seek grant funding to support their operations, as we often do, then a lease of 25, 30 years is normally expected by such funders. And I think that's recognised in our provisions. And again, my experience supporting what Councillor Callard said, I witnessed those leases being made with community organisations in my ward without necessarily coming to Cabinet or coming to a scrutiny committee, and I wouldn't have expected that to have happened.
Just to give a little bit more context to that, Deputy Leader, we're currently working with 3 of our community organisations at the moment on renewing their leases.
Yeah. And tortuous it can be on both sides on occasion, in my experience, but we reached the conclusion, and we will do. So if I move to the recommendation, the recommendation is that Cabinet agrees, 1, to award the lease tender to Monmouthshire Muslim Community Association. Is that agreed?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. And 2, to delegate authority to the Chief Officer for Resources to negotiate the lease in accordance with the tender award. That agreed?
Yeah.
That's agreed. Thanks very much for that. And I believe that is the end of our agenda. So if I can thank all Cabinet members and Councillor John for their participation in this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. See if you've ever seen watching on YouTube. Yeah, but I've subscribed.